The
Right.
joke gift that I received was a shirt that says, "Yes, I do in fact live under a rock." Like, that's where I was at. All right.
Yeah.
That's the best way to contextually describe that point. And then I found productivity. And for some reason, that like dopamine rush of like, oh, I got this done. I got this done. I got this done.
Mm.
Mixing that with some self help and some minimalism, which I really, really enjoyed. Um, I just ended up feeling a lot better in my day to day life.
When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run, I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision. Woo! Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Speaker Vision podcast. I am your host, Tariq Williams, and not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope, your one-stop shop for everything empowerment. So let's get right into it. So this episode, we talk about empowerment, but I want to make sure that I'm giving y'all value. All right. We're giving you value on the podcast. We're talking about some important issues. We're talking about what it looks like for maybe even for you to use technology in your daily life or what it means for you to be productive. And when it comes to content creation, I've been going around some different avenues and I found this individual and his team and they seem to be doing some really great work. So we have some great guests with us today. We have the creator of Rise Productive, Demetri Panici, and his podcast co-host, Chanz. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. You really bring the energy.
Hey, you got
Hell
to,
yeah. Hell yeah.
you know. Oh man. So language is really important to the podcast and everything like that and to the mission that we're talking about. And so if you could describe your business Rise Productive in one word and how it got to where it is now, how would you explain it?
One word would be see, I feel like I want to use 2 to 3, but I got to
Uh,
use 1. So I think I'm going to try to just use effort. That would
effort.
be the word. Um,
Okay.
or it something adjacent to that, like effort. And to explain what I mean by that, I would just say that
Yeah.
I have been doing this on the side, only on Friday as of this recording. It'll come out like by the time this comes out, I will be doing this full time. But I've been doing this for like 4 years on the side between having like a job and or being a full time like student and athlete
Hmm.
in college.
Hmm.
So why I would say effort is because it's just been a lot of effort to get here, and it also kind of coincides with I would say what we talk about on the podcast a lot is just like kind of got to give effort in order
Hmm.
for a lot of things that you want to come your way to come into reality.
Sure, sure. And so explain Rise Productive to everyone just to make sure everyone understands what you've created and what exactly it is.
Yeah. So in the spring of 2020,
Hmm.
I started a YouTube channel that was like Demetri. It just was called the Demetri Panici YouTube channel, whatever it
Hmm.
was. And that channel then blossomed into a podcast that then was focused on more self-help and like business topics, and then the
Right.
YouTube channel is focused on about productivity apps and tutorials on how to be more productive.
Hmm.
And as the channel grew, I was very fortunate enough that a lot of different software companies started reaching out to me, and now I make tutorials as like a content agency for a lot of these productivity apps, and
Okay.
got a little team going. And then every single week for the last 3-ish years, Chance and I have recorded an episode of the Rise Productive podcast, as well as produced some newsletters and shorter podcast episodes to kind of give people insights into business or just honestly self-help and growth as well. Is like that's a big shtick for us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been doing all this while like in school and making time to put all this together?
Yeah, spring of 2020, I was a senior going into my master's program in
Okay.
college.
Okay.
And yeah, so I did it for like 2 years of college and then 2 years out of school. And I guess, yeah, November probably of 2019 would have been the most accurate time as to me starting this, because that's when I like bought the domain on my website and started like getting into it. But yeah, it's been about like 4 years of doing two jobs basically.
Mhm.
A little bit less intense at the beginning, but as it's grown, it's
Sure.
got more and more intense. But yeah, no, it's been a 2 year journey of wild and craziness, and I was very fortunate to have my buddy here join me on the podcast about a year in to have somebody to always talk to about the business, as well as try to grow the pod too.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so what are the main things you guys talk about on the podcast? Like what are some of the topics typically?
Yeah, I mean, getting back to another word that maybe describes Rise Productive is
Yeah.
intentionality.
Oh,
It
Okay.
dang
kind of
it, that's the
grew.
better word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh
Why intentionality, Chance?
just trying to foster kind of like a lot of reflection in different aspects of life. And so that's how the podcast has grown, kind of grown. It started out as something that was self-help. When I joined the podcast, Demetri's YouTube channel looked like a little bit of a vlog that was also kind of doing some self-help stuff. And then that gradually grew into him being like a Notion guy and getting into software apps. And through that, those tools, he's able to become more intentional with how he's managing his personal time, how he's managing tasks between school and doing the YouTube, and also being on a Division 1 cross country team. And from there, it kind of grew into, okay, well, how can I be intentional about building this business? How can I move it in the right direction without getting caught up in, all the shiny objects that are the different directions that I can go? And so, yeah, mainly our topics are surrounded by current circumstances, but also trying to drive home a lesson about either business on a software basis, or more of like a personal level, but generally tied up with that intentionality.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I like intentionality. That I like the effort behind the intentionality. So, if you
I
have
meant the same thing.
exactly, exactly. Well, you can't really have one without the other, right? So you can have all the
Absolutely.
intentions in the world, but if you got no effort behind it, then what are we talking about?
True, true, true.
So I like that. And so when you bring those things together, and it seems like your brand has talked a lot about productivity, and
Hmm. Hmm.
so how did it turn into productivity for your brand, and why is productivity so important?
Uh, I found productivity and self help in the spring of like 2018 ish. I had a bit of a, or 2019, I had a bit of a like rough start to my beginning of college. I found that through a lack of intentionality and productivity, I was like, I was doing okay. Like I
Mhm.
did fine in school, like I guess, all right, standards for myself. I had like a 3.4, which for me, just like I wasn't happy with or whatever. Great for
Mhm.
context. Everyone, our average GPA on the track team was like a 3.7. So like, so like, you
You're
know,
bringing the team down.
I was bringing the
You
team down. All
brought
right,
down the
I was bringing the
average.
team. I was bringing, yeah, 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 yeah. And like I had a massive World of Warcraft addiction,
Yeah, yeah,
and just like it wasn't a very like the first couple of years of school. There was like, for context, to tell you, we did a Secret Santa gift exchange every year.
Okay.
And my junior year, Chance is gonna laugh. He remembers when our buddy we always would do a joke gift and a real gift. The
Right.
joke gift that I received was a shirt that says, "Yes, I do in fact live under a rock." Like that's where I was at. All right.
Yeah.
That's the best way to contextually describe that point. And then I found productivity. And for some reason, that like dopamine rush of like, oh, I got this done. I got this done. I got this done.
Mm.
Mixing that with some self help and some minimalism, which I really, really enjoyed. I just ended up feeling a lot better in my day to day life, found a passion for content creation.
Mm.
And I feel like if you work through the frame of mind that you want to be productive slash grow as a person, things that bothered you previously don't bother you as much a couple years later, because you've grown a lot, and like, critiques or even just life circumstances don't affect you anymore because you have beaten that, situation. Like, oh, I don't like my apartment. It's a crappy place. It's like, well, if you're more productive, maybe you get like a raise or whatever you could get out of it. Like, I think it actually is like not a one-stop shop for solving everything, but it
Sure.
does solve a fair amount of life's problems.
My mom would always tell me, she was like, Tariq, if your room's not clean, how do you even function? I was like, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just here. What do you?
I'm just, you know, um, and it made me think what you were talking about because with my journey in creating my podcast, my brand, and thinking about things that happened. So with my blindness, for example, and like I walk around with a white cane, and I've come to a place where I can accept that now, right? But back like, gosh, I guess that's almost over 10 years ago. Wow. So about 12 years ago or so, when I lost my vision, I was definitely at a place where you wouldn't catch me anywhere like trying to look blind. Like I wouldn't use my cane, you know what I mean? I would try to not I didn't want to accept it because it was new and I didn't know any other blind people or anything like that. So but once I started accepting who I was as an individual and really thinking about what my identity was as a person, it didn't matter to me anymore.
Okay. Wow.
S-
If you don't mind me asking, when did
Yeah.
at what? Not maybe not at what age, if you don't want to age yourself, but what ended up causing your? You weren't born with this. What ended up causing your blindness?
Yeah, so at the age of 16, I became blind. And I've met a lot of blind people in the past 10, 15 years or so at this point. But I wish I could say that I have this cool story.
Okay.
But I don't. Uh, um, I've heard some interesting stories, but I actually became blind at 16 due to a genetic disorder that
Oh, okay.
we had no idea that I had. And so it
Okay.
just triggered I got hit in the eye, and then we thought that was the reason, and then 8 months later, my other eye started going bad, and then we were like, "Oh, there's something else going on here." So, that was how that happened.
Okay.
So
Thank you
and
for
so
sharing.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, like, and I don't mind it, like, and I talk about it with the listeners quite a bit, and so, like, when we talk about it, I just start recognizing, like, "Hey, accept you for you," and so I'm really big in the
Sure.
self-help space, right? I'm very big in the self-help space, and breaking down different concepts, and what that looks like for me. So, using my cane, and walking around with my white cane and getting
Hmm.
comfortable with the different blindness technologies and everything like that, but it's something that I had to learn how to do, and I was doing things a bit differently. And so when it comes to like just doing new things, so let me ask you, when it comes to doing new things and exploring like some of the different softwares that you'd use on a daily basis, um, do you ever feel uncomfortable when you come across some of those different situations if you're using something you've never used before? Because I know like several people will avoid technology because like, hey, that's
Mm,
new.
mm.
I ain't doing that. Right.
Yeah, I think I can speak to this, but I'd also like to speak to maybe Chance to follow up with this because he had a different experience in like being productive with like tech or not prior. I like lean into it hard. I'm a dork, right? Like I
Love it. Love
love
it.
it.
You're all
Such a
good. You're
fan.
all good.
Yeah, and every time I'm like, I don't know how to do. I'll be like, all right, here's some context as to how little I don't lean into it. The only time I get uncomfortable is if I have to like try to learn how to code.
Mm,
Like no code tools, totally fine all the time.
okay.
I use a tool like Zapier and Make.com, which are automation platforms. Essentially, you can set up certain triggers and stuff in applications to then have it automatically automate tasks or send out reports, do these kind of things. I was watching the movie Interstellar. Like my idea of a perfect Friday is like watching a movie I really like and like
Okay.
making
Okay.
automations while on the couch. So like I do not
Nice.
lean away from software much, but yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
for
cool.
me, I think it just to briefly jump in. I think for me, it's much more of a challenge. Like Demetri had to sit there and teach me how to build out Google Calendar and like make that make sense for me. And so it
Mm,
was more of a challenge for me, but I recognized the value of that tool and how I was able to make time with this uncomfortable experience.
mm. Okay. Okay. So that's interesting. So I'll start with you, Chance, for this next one then, because when I think about using my cane and getting to a place where, I had to, I had to, I felt like I had to work so hard in order to travel without my cane. And so I once I started using it, accepting myself and accepting my identity, and I am who I am, I don't really watch movies and do automation on my couch on Friday nights, but to each his
Fair
own.
enough. Fair enough.
To each his own.
I'm one of the 5 people.
There you go. But it came to a point where once I started doing that in terms of my traveling and everything like that, I think I started looking, I was like, why not? This is where I'm at. Think smarter, not harder. Act smarter, not harder. So when you started exploring Google Calendar a little bit, Chance, was that very difficult for you to get into that new, and like was that more of a thinking smarter, not harder piece for you? And then I'll pass it over to you after that, Dimitri, and to talk about your thoughts on thinking smarter, not harder.
Yeah, I think it is a matter of thinking smarter, not harder. And it's a little bit of trying to rationalize the whole idea of like you need to schedule time in your
Mm,
day and in your week. But I think also part of it was just kind of like, yeah, I liked having that grind mentality that I'm, working really hard, but I think I was a little scared to actually look at how much time I was actually wasting when I put it all down to
mm,
Google Calendar. It's like I had this illusion, I'm working really hard, but I'm actually not working very smart. I'm not task batching certain things I should be doing at the same time. Instead, I'm, sitting here reading for 30 minutes, telling myself I'm grinding, and then picking up my phone, or, I start cooking, or all these different directions. And so yeah, that was mainly the discomfort for me, was kind of some of those realizations.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, and I guess for me, like I've just been like a fanatic about the whole like trying to work smarter thing since I fell into the whole shtick. All the
Yeah.
time, I very much am trying to optimize. Like, Chance is gonna laugh so hard at this, but earlier today, I mean, I only had to do a 3 mile run, bud, and I may or may not have simmered my rice during the first 2 miles of my run, then ran upstairs and then turned it off, and then ran back down and did the rest of my run. He's
That's awesome.
shaking his head. That's how like deep in I am. I'm like, dude, I was wondering if I could do this when I like my cooking.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
That's hilarious. So I mean, it doesn't get much more productive than that though. Cause so you planned
Nah.
your did you plan your run to
Hmm.
then stop at your house as a part of your run? Was that like, and
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah. I looked
uh,
back at the 2 mile mark, ran up the stairs, and then turned it off, ran down, and by the time it came back, the rice was steamed,
that's great.
and
And
That's
dinner
I
was
get
made.
great.
I get a voice message or text like this every day from Demetri. It'll be like, dude, you won't believe what I just figured out how I could automate. He'd be like, I take the audio from this podcast, put it in AI, it turns into a newsletter, and it automatically sends out, or something like that. And he'll be so excited. I'm like,
Good for
cool,
you.
cool.
Cool, cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Dude.
Why is automation so important to you? Like, why? Tell me about like the points and how that works for business in general.
I think it's very important because I love I have a fascination with process, and I have a fascination with why do something manually if it could be automated. I've thought about this a lot, and I think it's a interesting trend in life. I don't like repetitively doing something.
Hmm.
Like doing the same thing over and over again is like, if it's possible, the second that I am aware of the fact that something could be different, this is like a life trend for me. The second I'm aware that something could be different, I then want, and then I perceive that as the better option.
Hmm.
I then go for that as the default. So since I am now aware that automation could be a thing, if I realize that a process that I'm doing can be done without me having to do it more than once, I then
Yeah.
default to need to figure that out and
Mm.
automate it. Because going back to that intentionality thing, life's pretty short, and I'm not sure what the life purposes of spending the 5 minutes copying and pasting stuff into ChatGPT. If I'm gonna make an infinite amount of newsletters or an infinite amount of videos that need to be reviewed, my video editor or me shouldn't have to, after a video needs review,
Hmm.
then go and press share link and then find the client's like Slack channel and post, send it in there, it should
Yeah.
automatically just send it to them after the status gets changed and need review. That's like the way my brain works. And
Yeah.
then I'll just literally ask the team, I'm like, is there anything else that you manually do that you think you would wish you didn't have to manually do? And it's like, it could be templated, it could be automated. Just tell me. Just tell me. And
Yeah.
then they'll like not think of anything. And then a couple weeks go by, they'll be like, yeah, actually, I really don't like, or like, could you maybe make it so that I can, when it needs review, like it could automatically send a message? I'm like, yes, actually, that's a thing. I don't know. That's like, I love that. It's so fun to me.
Wow. I don't. Gosh, I'm struggling right now because I'm thinking like I, I feel like you're the person I've always been looking for in my life. I don't
Well,
know. I
well,
need to
thank you.
automate some things in my life for sure. I'm like, does he know all my issues? So so when it comes to productivity and automation and everything like that, let's talk a bit more about your clients. Um how do people reach you? What are the services that you typically have? And what are some of the things you start to look at when you first get a client?
Good question. I provide a fair amount of services. I just describe them as content services. So I make
Mhm,
like long form, short form, update newsletters, or long form and short form videos, update
mhm,
newsletters, and then some other stuff. The other stuff would include things like blog posts, content strategy, and essentially the entirety of the business is catered around taking tools that companies have and making content that will grow their company's platform, but more so give education on how the product works. My general marketing pitch is that if a this is based off of stats, but there's a rough stat out there that like 75% of people who leave software tools and stop using them,
mhm,
aka they churn. The reason that they answer in those exit surveys is because they don't understand how the product works.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So all my content is catered around how can we make educational content so less people will churn. And if less people churn, that means you have a more active user base. If that active user base is very excited about you, it will hit critical mass and they will discuss it much more than any sort of arbitrary marketing campaign we could make, i.e., it wasn't. I don't know if you're familiar with Notion, but it's a ridiculously popular tool.
Yeah,
Um, and the reason that it's popular is not because Notion was making marketing videos about it. It became popular because it was easy to use and so many people ended up using it that then they ended up talking about it. And when people talk about it, impacts users a lot more
yeah.
than when the company says, "Look how cool my tool is." It's like, can I swear on this podcast?
Do whatever you want to do. You're good.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. You're gonna say your product's good. You're gonna
Right,
say your
right.
product's good.
Yeah,
Like if you
exactly.
don't, then obviously we're not getting it. So that's the
Exactly.
whole shtick. You gotta educate to then hit critical mass.
Mhm,
Is like my
mhm.
whole yeah.
So how did it become so important for you to? Because now I'm learning. Okay, like I have things I want to say, but I'm like I'm engaged. I'm trying to learn something new myself.
Nice.
And when I was going through a lot of your content, and I was like, oh wow, like I never thought about that when it came to Google Calendar and not having to pay for different apps or what have you, or a Chat GPT. I was going through it, man. I was going through it. And so when it comes to, I guess all the, I guess, why is educating so important? Because that seems to be a core value, a core, pillar to everything that you're doing. So why is educating like your population, your audience so important to you?
That's a good question. I believe it is because and Chance can speak to this too as
Mhm,
well, based on how I then transferred my knowledge to him. I have a fundamental belief that a lot more people would actually be very much into productivity and self-help if they were introduced to it in a way that was digestible.
Okay.
And
Yep.
prior to being introduced to it in a way that was easy for me to understand, and in a way that I thought made it sound cool and made it sound like life improving,
Right.
I was in a worse place. Right. So my whole ethos is if I can teach people and have the same initial touch point that I got from Matt Diavella in order to get me into this stuff, then I could send someone on the life trajectory that I had. I don't know if you noticed, but in that video, like why you shouldn't pay for apps,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm as tutorial guys go, I'm pretty goofy.
Yeah. 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 Right.
So the reason for that is to make it more digestible.
Yeah. Yeah. Chance, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going off Dimitri's point, and I think this is related to that conversation about software productivity apps in general, is that there's just a lack of understanding of how this stuff works. And I think that the ethos of self-help and productivity is, I think for a lot of people who aren't involved in the space, is like people who have those like morning routines where it's like, I'm up at 4 a.m. I
Yeah.
have a shower and like a meditation and then, like a skincare routine. And so people have this certain vision of it rather than something that's practical and actually able to help you actualize all the things you want to do in your life. Like for me, I'm not obsessed with the tools as much as Demetri is. I love the ones that help me,
Right.
and I love them because there's a lot of different things I want to do in my life. I want to be a great student. I want to be able to run. I want to be able to be on this podcast and have a social life. But
Yeah.
I recognize that, being able to make all those things come into fruition takes systems. And so being able to share those experiences and help other people kind of balance all those different things is a core part of why we do the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a good point. And so when I think about the education and the values and everything like that, and start thinking about having that structure in place. See, I'm not really see, gosh, I'm not a morning routine person. And I talked I talked about this on a podcast episode a few months ago. Because and I actually don't I can't stand the way morning routines are even marketed, because the way
Same.
someone markets a morning routine, it's like, this is the the vitamin you need to do everything. This is the key to life. You know what I mean? And like, your morning routine is not the key to life, bro. I'm sorry, like it's not it.
Nope.
Um, and and just being real, what works for you all might not work for me.
Mm.
And so getting back to even that piece to talk about making content digestible. When it comes to connecting with people and everything like that, I'm a big believer in meeting people where they're at. I think that's so important. But then when I think about the mentors that I've had and the people that I've worked with, and when I work with my clients, um, it's really important to me to not only meet people where they're at, but then have high expectations for them and meet them where they're going to be next. I think that's
Mm.
also really important. And so when you talk about creating digestible content and your audiences and everything like that, how do you feel like your content has evolved when it comes to moving forward and with your audience and everything like that?
I guess the main thing would be I'm less dogmatic. Like I don't speak in absolutes as much unless I'm being ironic. Like there's a
Uh,
series I have called
we're get,
Blank App Sucks.
we're gonna get
Yeah.
into that. We're gonna get into that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not as dogmatic, and I'll hedge a lot more and make sure that people understand that where I'm coming from is from I'm being blunt to prove a point, not to say that it's the perfect answer to the problem
yeah. Hmm.
often. And that's how I think it's grown a lot.
Hmm.
There's also been a lot of like technical improvements. I have editors now. I have workflows to make sure that there's like quality assurance, that kind of stuff. But from a base level, just trying to be more human as time goes on and trying to tell stories, not just like you should
Yeah,
do this with your life. Wake up, do this. If you wake up at 5, your life is that much is like X% better. Like, don't talk like
yeah.
that. That's crazy. That's creepy.
Right,
Getting
right.
away from that and being more human, I think, is the ways it's improved a lot.
Mm, mhm, mhm. And Chance, your thoughts on how the podcast has continued to grow?
Yeah, I mean, even to go to like I was gonna actually hop in on the YouTube part too. Is like
Yeah,
Demetri,
yeah.
you're very responsive to what the audience was doing, especially when you're figuring out how you're going to niche down the whole YouTube channel. Because as we
Mm,
said, we kind of started
Mm,
out big, like I'm just like a self-help blogger, vlogger, and they can go in a million different directions. But I think over time, you kind of notice that the little tips where it's like, okay, here's one little thing that you could do better with Notion or Todoist or whatever, automations. I think just meeting the audience where it's at, where it's like, okay, people are coming to Demetri Panici for little tips day over day to be able to improve their software ecosystems. And you just met them where you're at instead of trying
yeah.
to force something that maybe you wanted to do, but they didn't want.
mm.
You found something that kind of met both. It was something that you were willing and enjoying doing, but also, that's what they wanted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
I like that. I like that. And then I think where it gets difficult for people though is they work so hard and they think they're heading in the direction of where they want to get to, and they're using these apps and they're listening to your content, and they're like, I don't know if it's working out or whatever, and they keep working at whatever it is they're trying to do, if it's their job or whatever the case may be is, and then they start suffering from some burnout. So then I thought it was interesting in your content how you talk about have the tech piece productivity, but then you also mentioned burnout. And I actually recently did a podcast episode on burnout, and I was curious to get I thought your thoughts on burnout were interesting, and I was going to go through mine with you and get your thoughts on that.
When did we talk about burnout? Was it on a podcast episode or was it on YouTube?
I want to say it was a YouTube episode that you talked about burnout.
We did
Hmm.
a podcast episode on burnout a bit while back. But it was probably when we were posting the podcast on YouTube as well.
Okay. Well, my general opinion on burnout is, well, okay. Don't be dogmatic. Okay. So from my perspective, I don't really get burnt out, but I do believe it's that I'm
Mhm.
very fortunate that I am working in something where I have passion and purpose. I'm passionate about
Yeah.
tools and making content, and there's a purpose behind it, because if one person ends up having a touch point today that's kicks off their very, very improved like life trajectory because they're like into something that's more important than like the rabbit holes that exist on social media.
Yep.
Then that's why I'm just like always fine, and I don't generally burn out. I also
Yeah.
think I'm a very high energy individual who used to like run endless amounts of miles for a living. So like it's really hard to like burn me out. I mean,
Yeah.
Chance can speak to that too. Like it's more difficult, I think, from like our backgrounds to like really get tired of doing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, there's a mental endurance that comes with physical endurance, and I think that is definitely translated for both of us. But also just being able to pull on different levers. I think Dimitri, with the business, there's different parts of it you're able to work on, and so
Yeah, it's less
week over
boring.
week, yeah, week over week, it might be like
It's
you
true.
might be like, okay, one day, okay, I'm going to record a bunch of videos. I'm going to record 30 videos. And then,
Wow.
you pull that lever and then you're like, okay, I'm going to stop doing that because I got tired or I got bored or whatever. And now I'm going to go do this other thing. And so
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah,
another really real way that you combat it is just having that kind of playfulness.
yeah. For context, yeah, that does happen. He's not exaggerating. Like we have like a short form version of the Productive Brew is the name of our short form podcast, and I
Cool.
recorded from June through January in like a day and a half.
Wow.
I just like did
Wow.
I just did like whatever that is, 40 episodes. Or no, that's not
Wow.
math. 30 episodes. And yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. I was like, I just kept sitting down and being like, yeah, I could talk about this life, like, or business sort of topic. And then just
Mhm.
like kept doing it like throughout
Mhm.
the day for 2 days. And then I was like, oh, I'm good till January. Cool. Cool.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Um, that when Chance was talking about that pulling the different levers and everything like that, that's what I was getting at too, because you mentioned that if you spent your entire like life or all the time in the world only on Rise Productive, it might start
Mm-hmm.
to burn you out a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
then since it's not the only thing that you're doing, you're able to be good with it. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's almost like you set different boundaries. Would you call them boundaries or?
Yeah, we call them boundaries. And yeah, I think I was speaking about that in the context of how I have a job still, or I guess I won't soon. Well, so we'll see how that theory stands up. No, but I'm trying to combat that with having a time frame of like I don't want to work after dinner anymore, really. Like
Mm,
I kind of got into the like every hour is working hour.
yeah, yeah.
And yes, it was broken up by my day job, which helped. But I'm getting back into running again. I'm getting back into being health. Not that I like became unhealthy from like a. I actually was very good from a diet standpoint, so I didn't have any like crazy health change or anything.
Sure,
But
sure, sure.
just from like a mental health standpoint, some things fell on the back burner. Like I don't journal as much as I used to. I don't meditate as much as I used to. I don't work out and like leave what I'm doing to work out.
Hmm.
I walk during work, but getting back to doing that and separating things is pretty good. And
Hmm.
turning off Slack and turning off email. I'm trying to make that
Mm,
approach to like silence notifications on Slack. I don't have the buzz. I never have had my ringer on.
hmm.
Um, which started as a thing because I didn't want my parents to hear that people were texting me and them awkwardly be like, "Who's talking to you?"
No, no
Um,
doubt, no doubt. I
yeah.
feel that.
And then Chance can speak to this too. I'm always on Do Not Disturb, and I believe he is as well, which is like quality for celebrate separation of pings for sure for me now, but
Yeah,
texts as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. You got to make that time for yourself. You got to make that time for yourself and be able to to escape, right? To escape.
Hmm.
When I think of burnout, and because it's a problem that a lot of people came to me with, and that's why I ended up talking about it. And so I was like, and I'm like, bear with me, follow me on this journey because it's gonna sound a little bit crazy at first. And it's more along the lines of the self help piece. Burnout um is important, and we actually talked about a few of the steps that I think that you should take to get through your burnout. But burnout can actually be a good thing. I know that sounds crazy. So
Huh.
follow me, follow me, follow me. Burnout can be actually a good thing because if you recognize that you have some sort of burnout, you recognize that you deserve more in your current situation. And you recognize that more exists for you, or a
Mm,
balance or a
mm,
boundary does exist.
yeah.
And whatever it is now ain't it. So
I'll agree with that. I'm sold. The only
yeah.
time that the only time that I like really experience burnout is I'm in law school, and so we have
Oh,
like final
nice.
season, and it's like these 3-hour exams that determine 100% of your grade. And those 2 weeks, I've been known to treat my body pretty poorly, and
Yeah.
so it's the climax of a long semester, and I neglect a lot of other things. I can still get the runs in and feed myself, but it's like a bare minimum. and and so by the end, I always walk out of that last exam like, yeah, I need a change of pace, a lifestyle change for sure. And yeah, so I'm sold on that. I agree with that.
You know what you need to do, Chance. What you need to do is during your 3 mile run, you should be steaming your rice,
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
and at mile
You ever thought
two,
about it?
Or doing flashcards during the run.
there
Dude,
you
you're just not being efficient enough. I don't know what the hell's your problem, but
go.
no, I'm kidding. But no, that's no, I agree, Tariq. I agree on that. I have recently experienced some indicators that when it comes to recording in large quantities for clients
Mm,
consistently, I'm getting a little burnt out. But
okay.
and
Okay.
but like I'm very much like I approach things from the standpoint of like, all right, I put myself in the situation. How do I get out of it? Like, let's not complain.
Yeah, for
Let's like
sure.
you can complain to your team members and be like, I would like to figure out a way to get out of this, but ultimately I did it to me. So, here we are.
I mean, hey, I've checked out your content, with the podcast and the YouTube, and it's great stuff. If nobody's ever checked it out or anything like that, any of the listeners, let everybody know where you're at. Because I honestly, like, I was binge watching some Rise Productive the past week. So, to tell us where to find all your stuff at.
Yeah, if you go to riseproductive.com, on the bottom of the banner, there'll be a bunch of different stuff. There's the Demetri Panici YouTube channel. You have the podcast. You also have a newsletter called The Productive Brew, where we give insights on basically living more intentionally. And I also did. I don't really post a lot on TikTok or Instagram, but I'm trying to get back on the Twitterverse. Sorry,
Okay.
the
X.
what's that joke? What's the artist formerly known as X, or as Twitter?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I just doing my best to post around, and yeah, check us out. Appreciate it.
Cool. And then we'll make sure, and I'll get all the links from you. We'll make sure it's in the description below. Let's do some rapid fire questioning. I'm gonna ask you some different questions, and then you just give your answers, and your quick opinion on a particular app or software that exists. That sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Let's go. Windows versus Mac.
Ooh, Jesus. I have both. Mac is amazing.
Okay. Wow.
Windows is also amazing.
Okay.
I think both sides of the argument are missing the point as to why the other one's so good, because they're psyoped into believing that it is the only right one.
Okay.
Both sides have great things. Mac for creators or students, Windows for more technical people.
All right, got it. ClickUp versus Notion.
All right, ClickUp. Similar to my visit to Kansas City, great idea, poor execution. Similar to when I you ever seen like an up and coming city? Like when people say up and coming, great idea, poor execution. That was my description of Kansas City everywhere I went. That's ClickUp.
Okay.
Notion, amazing when they don't roll out updates, but you're always wishing they rolled out more updates, because it's awesome. But then they release a big update every quarter, and then it's slow as hell for 3 weeks, and you're like, was it really worth it? Then when you're in the lulls, it's really worth it. But yeah.
All right. And for those who don't know what ClickUp or Notion is, it's project management app, you would say, right?
Yeah, that's accurate. Yep.
All right, perfect. Let's go with ChatGPT or Google Bard.
Bard's a thing.
All right.
That's my
got it. All right. So
I'm trying to be quippy as hell with this.
Right? All right, cool. Let me think. I had a few others. Email sequencing. Favorite for email sequencing, email software, email marketing.
Oh, that's Beehive's really good.
Okay.
Beehive.
All right. Yeah. Cool. So when it comes to all these different apps and everything like that, would you recommend different things for different businesses or companies, even because you've used and reviewed a bunch of these different apps? So would you recommend different things for different people?
Yeah. I don't know if one of the rapid fire questions includes my series, Blank App Sucks.
So say that again.
I don't know if one of the final questions includes the Blank App Sucks series I do, but
no, actually, I didn't actually. But actually, that was gonna be the next one. Go ahead. Yeah.
Because it might fall into this, but the reason I do that series, is for this exact reason. It's entirely a satire about the way the productivity app community approaches apps. They're all like, "This is the right tool. This is the right tool, bro, sister." It's all contextual to what you like. The biggest indicator of productivity that is proven by science is whether you like what you're doing or not. You're very productive in the lens of being productive. If, dudes on Sunday, whoever on Sunday, NFL Red Zone, that's the most productive. NFL Red Zone is the most productive vehicle to watch football on NFL Sunday.
So, for the real quick, I can definitely attest to that.
Yeah, it's the best. Okay, it is the best. But my point is, The biggest indicator of productivity is whether you enjoy it or not. If you don't, if I enjoyed ClickUp more, I would have
Yeah.
said Notion, great in idea, poor in poor in or great idea, poor execution. It's literally
Yeah.
just preference. So outside of some bugginess being overkill in some places, like most apps are okay. Like let's not get it twisted. The reason the series exists is to point out everyone is constantly yelling and swearing. For some reason, it's a very toxic community. Like this is
Right.
the right thing. This is the right thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's all about your preference. So don't believe what anyone says about this is the best. Just hear them about the features and test it out.
I mean, and I think that's great advice, but then it gets into spending money for something or whatever, and I think that's where
Sure.
people
Yeah.
get nervous about that. But I mean, what you were just saying reminds me of my basketball days. I remember like I would like have like an awesome crossover, or whatever, and like go to the basket and just blow the layup. All right. And then my coach would go to me. My coach would go to me, Tariq, $1 million move, 10-cent shot.
Great. That's a good one. I like that. Million
Oh
dollar
gosh.
shit.
But when it comes to that series that you have about like this app sucks or whatever, I mean, it's popular to have these controversial opinions, though. And I feel like sometimes people don't understand you. Maybe just use the app and see if it works for you. And so
Yeah.
my last question though for you is for in that going back and forth is Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome.
Edge. Not even a question. It's been this is one of the biggest hit pieces I've ever. This is misinformation fucking galore. Okay. So
Okay, got it.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Chrome has been bad for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
It's just an unconscionable lack of education to everybody that exists. How bad it is in comparison to like Edge, Firefox, Brave, anything else. It's makes me uncomfortable.
Oh,
I really, yeah.
so you would choose Firefox even over Google Chrome.
Yeah. Basically what happened in the last like 5 years is that they very much bloated the software. It uses way too much RAM. And while it is
Mhm.
easily accessible from like a Google Cloud sort of situation,
Yeah.
it's based off of something called a Chromium based browser, which Google made.
Mhm.
And there's a bunch of different apps that use the Chromium base and then make their browser off of it. Google Chrome is the most bloated one of the options. You have like Opera, you have Brave, you have Edge. When Edge rebranded from Internet Explorer, they said it's not Internet Explorer, it's a brand new thing. They never clarified that it's basically just a better version of Google Chrome because they
Yeah,
couldn't because Google owned because Google created Chromium and that
right.
would have probably been some false advertising. And they could never it's like the whole Bing thing now. It doesn't matter that like it's powered by ChatGPT. Google's still being used more than
Mhm.
Bing. Like it's very sad actually because I switched to Edge after using Brave as well, and I'm just like, it's laughable how much better it is. Like it makes me sad.
This is awesome. This is
Yeah.
awesome. This has been educational for me. We're gonna have to talk some more offline and figure out how I need to get my life together and be a bit more productive. And it's neat to see like how knowledgeable you are, like on these different topics and everything like that. Like I said, all these things
Thank you.
mostly go right over my head. So it's neat. And I would love to even have a conversation with you too about even like accessibility and what that might look like if more like companies would made that a priority.
Yeah.
Um I think all those things are really important. And so as we get ready to wrap up here, my question for you is when it comes to Rise Productive and expansion and moving forward, give me give me 2 words on what it looks like for the expansion of Rise Productive and the podcast.
Be better.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
I think it's very important that whatever you produce online, generally speaking, if you just make the content or the process better,
Mhm.
things will probably work out. It's actually not that complicated. Like the process of getting better is complicated. The like solution is
Mm.
like just be better and they'll probably
But is the process of being better, like, I can see why someone would say that it's difficult, but I feel like when we think about being better, I think sometimes our subconscious thinks about being better than the person next to us, when ultimately it's about competing with yourself every day to be better and what that might look like for you.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. I mean, Chance just ran 2:29 in the marathon. Like, it's pretty damn good, right? Out of context for most people, they'd be like, "Holy!" But if he's trying to compare himself to what was his name, Kiptum yesterday?
Oh, Kelvin, guy who
Yeah,
won.
yeah. Like, you're not comparing yourself to him yesterday. I hope to God no.
For context, the world record in the marathon was set yesterday at the Chicago Marathon.
Two
Oh,
hours
That
and
was
30,
it was not
wow.
me.
2 hours and 35 seconds, right?
Chance, you broke the world record, man. That's awesome, bro.
That's crazy.
That's
Yeah, let's start
awesome.
that meme. Let's
Let's
start.
do
Let's start
it.
that. Yeah, it's like it's a Mandela effect. Chance Vissy at the marathon.
There you
Right.
go. That's awesome. And
Mhm.
and what about two words for you, Chance, in terms of what it looks like, expansion looks like you think moving forward?
Yeah, I think for me, um, not be better, but probably delegation and I don't know, like if mental space could be one word with a hyphen in it,
Ooh,
maybe. I think
okay.
I think it's always a ton of things. I think Demetri has a ton of things on the back burner. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that we want to do for the podcast that have just kind of taken a back seat just because moving the
Mm-hmm.
needle forward on the content services stuff. And so being able to push some things off to other people or to automation and have the mental space to be able to be creative and think big ideas for what's going to be next would really like be the next big step because that's always what it's been a big part of being able to make all this time with productivity is that you can think of how you're going to fill your new time with even better stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I like that. That's cool. All right. Yeah, this has been awesome. I think this is really cool. This was a unique episode for me because not all the time that we talk about like different materials and tools that people could be using or what that looks like. So this was really neat. So I really appreciate you all coming on to, educate my listeners and everything like that about some of the apps and everything like that. And I know we only scratched the surface, um, so go check out Rise Productive podcast and the YouTube channel and all that links below. And check them all out. But anything else you would like to add or some last thoughts, Demetri or Chance?
Yeah, I really appreciate you being on or you inviting us on the podcast.
Yeah.
Your energy is infectious.
Yeah, that
Thank
was
you.
going to be my sentiment too. You keep it up. I love what you're doing here, and I'll be sure to exchange the follow and keep up with everything that you're doing with the podcast because I love it. I love the energy.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. Once again, it's all about just empowering others. With my brand. So quick side note. It's really all about all of us continuing to grow. And so what you all are doing is helping so many people grow on Instagram, podcast, YouTube, etc. And here we're talking about a lot of those mindset concepts. And so thank you all for being here. And once again, everyone, not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. Thank you for listening to the Speak Your Vision podcast. When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run. I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.